Well, the problem has always been, how do you describe this kind of filmmaking? It's very difficult because it's not really conventional documentary, and it's not precisely a diary because I don't do it every day on a regular basis. It really is closer to an essay, and I think a phrase that I use sometimes is essay film. I think that's the closest. I mean, the problem is nobody's ever come up with a name for these kinds of films, like Chris Marker's film, Sans Soleil. What do you call it? It's an essay film, really, but it's not exactly an essay film. It's an epistolary film with Chris Marker. So I have the same problem. I don't know exactly how to describe these films, and I think I just make them and then let other people keep trying to come up with terms that describe what they are. I don't film all the time. You do have the impression that I'm filming constantly, but I'm not. That's impossible. First, as a human being, you can't be filming all the time and also have a family. But I think I exaggerate the degree to which I'm filming obsessively because there's something comical about it in a way, and I think people can relate to subject matter when it has some humor to it. So I exaggerate that a bit. I suspect if I ever did a mathematical analysis of it, I film less than 0.5 of 1% of my waking hours. It's not very much, but even that yields a large amount of film over 10 years. I have an archive with quite a bit of footage, and I think that footage is therefore emblematic of my life to some degree, even though it's like a core sample of geological strata. It's not obviously a huge amount of earth, but you take a small sample in a tube and you have many layers, and it gives you a picture of what the geology is of the region that you're doing the core sample. It's a little bit like that, I would say. Well, first of all, exactly what you said is true. I learned from Richard Leacock and watching the films of Fred Wiseman and D.A. Pennebaker, these, in America, the pioneers of cinema verite, and in Europe there was Jean Rouch, and in Canada there was Alan King. I mean, there were people all over the place, or at least in the Western world, who were experimenting with cinema verite in the late 60s. And when I saw these films when I was a student in the 1970s, they were amazing to me. They were unlike any films I'd seen before. So I wanted to emulate them. I wanted to copy them in a way. And I did make one film that was pure cinema verite, Space Coast, not autobiographical, no narration. And it's a good film, but I still felt somehow that I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't overall comfortable with it. That I wanted to try to make it more subjective, to challenge the notion of the pretense of objectivity that cinema verite can have, and to shape it more the way you would shape a story, a novel. And so I started experimenting with voiceover narration. And I wasn't the only person who was doing this. There were other filmmakers as well. Ed Pincus has done some wonderful subjective documentary work employing cinema verite footage. Jeff Kreines has done some wonderful films as well. So, you know, it's not as if I were the only one doing this, but I think I found my voice, as you said, by writing to the footage that I was gathering with my camera. And that suited me more than making films about the world in which I was completely invisible and I was completely silent. No, it's a problem. I mean, I teach. And one of the biggest problems I have is that students just keep shooting. And they're a little bit nervous that they're going to miss something, so they film everything. But then they have hours and hours of footage. It's a problem. It's a problem that it did not exist when I was learning how to make films when I was a student, because we were shooting on 16 millimeter. And you had to be somewhat conservative. You had to be very, very attentive to what was happening in front of the camera. Often you missed things because you were shooting film. But I think overall, it was, for me at least, beneficial to have learned documentary filmmaking with 16 millimeter film, because it made me more cautious, it made me more careful. And even now, when I finish a film and I start to edit, I have a relatively small amount of footage to edit compared to many, many filmmakers who have hundreds of hours, and then they get bogged down and they sink in this mass of digital images that they've accumulated with their cameras, and I seem so far to have avoided that. But you know, the thing that I like shooting with digital video is that it does encourage you to take chances a little more often than you would with 16mm film, because you might get something interesting if you just shoot for another 30 seconds or 45 seconds. And I think, for me, that's good. I appreciate that. My films are often incorporate, among other things, a portrait of the South. You mean the South in the United States? Yes, I think part of me is a Southern filmmaker. And that regionalism in the United States, it may be like Galicia here, I don't know, but it's a region that's very important to me because I grew up there. And so to the extent that I can incorporate a kind of affection and sensitivity to that area that maybe an outsider would not have, I do it. But it's not all that my films are about. But yes, I think it's fair to say that, among other things, I am a Southern filmmaker. That's why I talk so much.